Sweet V-neck, Steven. And look at your slicked back hair. What is going on with you?
Well, I had to go somewhere today, and I had to dress up, so that's why I've got this nice slicked back hair, my glasses on, my V-neck, which is actually an undershirt. It's my sweat-proof undershirt that has giant pads under the underarms.
Really?
Because
that's
I sweat.
a thing?
Dude, it is. They're called Thompson tees. They're not cheap. They're like $20 a pop, but I will say I never fear going out with like a gray shirt anymore, because in the past I would walk out and within 10 minutes I have a giant sweat mark under my arm. Now with these shirts, as embarrassing it is to say it, I can actually walk out of the house and wear a light colored shirt and not worry about sweating through it. So it's pretty cool. I used to actually bring 2 pairs of shirts anywhere I went. I would always have a backup in the car because that's how embarrassed I was about sweating.
This segment is not brought to you by Thompson Tees. And if it was, I would get 12.5% and Steven would get the rest. But you know what? The other tagline that they have is, if you get thirsty, all you need to do is squeeze and you can drink.
Oh,
Hashtag
man.
Thompson Tees.
It really is like a thick half-inch pad under the arm. And that's the only thing is, ironically, it kind of makes you sweat a little more. but
it catches the sweat.
Catches it. So
it's basically like the 80s called, and it's like the pads that the women had on their shoulders.
Exactly.
Except underneath.
It's literally that. Yeah, that's a perfect way to describe it.
Well,
what a great start to the show.
Well, I got to go to a thing on Saturday, possibly, too. My photography teacher died. Not Bauer, not the one who was in here that we interviewed. Mr. Is. You interviewed Mr. Is. You were there with me.
I was there in person, yeah.
10 years ago.
And that's why I'm dressed up, that you brought up. Yeah, I had to go to a viewing and a mass today for a friend, and it's always unfortunate when they die so young.
Was it open?
It was open casket, yeah.
Did you look?
Of course, yeah.
I refused to go to those. I drew a line years ago.
It's really
tough.
It
once. The girl was 18 in the casket, and I'm like, nope, that's not a person anymore. I'm not doing it. And I understand, but I'm not doing it. I will go to a.
Sure.
I will go to a.
The mass or
thing.
Something. Yeah.
Well, whatever I'm going to on Saturday, it's like there's a
service
from 11 to 3. There's a greeting,
a wake, a viewing, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, well, he'd be dead for quite a while at that point, so hopefully it's not like...
Well, I think you can only do open casket if it's within the week, because the body deteriorates too fast.
You keep people on ice, bro?
I don't know. I had a friend whose brother passed, and they thought he died. Well, actually, no, you're kind of right, because he wasn't. He was in his apartment for 3 days before they found him, so I guess that's why.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
That part's bad. But anyway, my photo teacher died. He had a brain aneurysm, and... That's just, you're gone, and he was 69. Nice. And unfortunately, it's unfortunate, but I feel like I should go. We'll see if I'm going. It's about an hour away. I probably should go.
Yeah, mine was about 30 minutes away from me today, and it took up a good 2 hours of the day, but it's the least we can do to pay our respect. So
yeah, not that person cares, because they're not here anymore.
It's the thought that counts, Jared.
I know. I'm just being that guy.
Yeah.
I'm being that guy. It's my favorite when they're like, your mom is always with you. I'm like, oh, is she really? Did she see what I did with that girl last night? Did she?
I mean, some people need that, Some people need that reassurance that they're always with them, and, but...
I don't.
You hope that she's not with you always because of the stuff you do behind the scenes.
Hey! I mean, she'd probably be like, oh, good job. Good job. Anyway, moving on.
Back to my sweatshirt, by the way, literally sweatshirt. Speaking of sweating, I've been working out lately and doing the T25 workout again, and it freaking sucks. For anyone that has done that, please text us at, what's the number, Jared?
313-710-9729. Are you a fatty looking to lose some weight?
That's me.
Try T25, and while you're at it, wear your Thompson tee if you want to sweat even more.
I will say, I don't know if this t-shirt could keep up with the amount I sweat during that workout, because it's one of those high intensity workouts, and for 25 minutes only, it's basically like a shortened version of Insanity, and it is brutal.
Virtual insanity is what we're living in.
Jamiroquai.
Hey, do you want one of these shirts? One of these workout shirts? I'd love to see what that looks like when it's done. You want a compression tee? I may have some compression tees for you.
No,
you
I actually have
one?
a bunch. I'm good.
But it says I shoot raw, Steven.
No, I'm good.
No, come on. You got to rep the brand. It's in your contract.
Shoot JPEG, which we're going to talk about coming up, right?
We're going to talk. I mean, I'm going to yell. I'm sure it's going to be. I don't know how much talking there will be. There will be some yelling.
Here we go.
Anyway, guys, welcome to RAWtalk episode number 40. Comes out every Friday. Anyway, it comes out every Friday, as you know. We appreciate you guys listening and commenting. And on the RAWtalks, leave some comments down below. Like I like to tell people why they should listen to RAWtalk. But we
comments
get your messages
down below. Where are they commenting?
On YouTube.
It's not on YouTube.
During RAWtalk, during Photo News Fix.
But they're not hearing this.
No, when they listen, this is RAWtalk. They're listening to RAWtalk. I'm saying go to Photo News Fix and leave some comments. So just go to the last
video, basically, and comment is what you're saying.
Well, basically. One day we'll do video again, Steven. One day we'll do video again.
One day, and then you'll can it after a few weeks of it taking too long.
Not if we had extra editors, Steven, and it actually worked.
We live streamed it and did it in one day, and you said it was too much. Well,
because it was too much.
Okay.
You know why I killed it. It was going off the rails.
We don't have to talk about this for the 1000th time.
So Monday, I drove down to Maryland, outside of Baltimore.
Maryland.
Baltimore, Maryland. I was getting interviewed by a ex-NFLer by the name of Eugene Monroe, who stands at 6'5", 260 right now.
Oh,
and he got into photography after football, or as a way to heal his brain, or he just felt that it helped him heal his brain from a lot of the concussions, because it helped draw some of those pathways again, because he had to think and learn. And so his brother reached out to me and was like, hey, we're starting a podcast. Would you like to come down to be on it? And I'm like, I have a Tesla. I'd like to drive it far. That was really what went through my mind.
Was that your test? You wanted to go down there just to test out the car? Is that the real reason you went down there?
Not the real reason, but it gave me a reason to drive it further and let it drive itself on the road.
That was your entire conversation with me pretty much on the way home. Of you talking about the car.
Well, because it was I would have had to refill a little bit on the way home. I'll explain that in a minute. But anyway,
it's a good test,
I went on Eugene Monroe's podcast. I'm not sure when it's coming out, but it was great. What I found interesting is he was wearing the stealth black shirt. And I didn't think of this at the time when I was there, but it was like, he's wearing my I Shoot Raw shirt like someone would wear his football jersey.
Sure.
Like he's a fan.
Yep.
And that was awesome. So he was great.
I love that shirt too. Anytime we do the stealth black where it's black on black, the I Shoot Raw black hat, that always sold really well, right? Back in the day?
Yeah.
Your bag.
I'm figuring out what to do with all of that.
The matte black, it's always really sharp looking, yeah.
Still trying to figure it out. I have to figure out what to do with the store, the merch store. If you want to go into the business side of it for a minute, we outsourced that years ago to this place, a couple years ago, to this place called Manhead Merch, which does like massive band, Machine Gun Kelly. They do Panic at the Disco. They do band merch because they print it. They fulfill
merch, yeah.
Big band merch. I'm not big band merch. The issue we ran into with them is that when you order a whole bunch of shirts up front, they have to recoup the money. They paid for those and then had to recoup, and it took a long time to see money.
It's like a record label.
Yeah, but the problem is I didn't see a lot of money from it in the 2-year period, which is disheartening. But on the other side, it didn't cost me any money to outlay like I used to outlay all of the money up front. But I don't want to bring it in-house again. They do a great job with the shipping, and they want to close the store down at this point and ship me all that leftover stuff. And I'm like, how about this? How about we cut down on, we're not going to get a shit ton of shirts up front. We'll continue to get the black, the stuff that normally sells, right? The original black, we'll keep that in stock. What if we do like one-offs every month? We do a new design. We do cool stuff. It sells. I'll upfront the money so you don't have to recoup it, and you don't feel like you have to be out that money and wait to recoup it, because I will pay up front the cost. As long as the printing and the printing costs are the costs that I am used to paying, right, for the right quality. So I'm hoping they go for that, because I don't want to have to figure out how to take this off again. And I still want to continue to sell shirts. And I think this might be a better way to do it. Like, okay, we're going to do hoodies. Maybe not this time of year, but we'll do a one-off for the zip hoodies. Maybe we'll start selling coffee, knives, pens, axes, anything that Peter McKinnon sells, we're going to do
copy
it.
And slap on an I Shoot Raw logo, and you're good to go.
Slingshots, yeah. If
$800 for a pen, yes.
Steven, why don't we do some coins? Why don't we do some I Shoot Raw coins? Like, guys, if you don't have this version 1 coin, you're fucked.
Well, the one thing is, too, we never, ever promote the shirts. I mean, minus a small drop down for a few seconds in almost every video that says, you want to buy the shirt? Check out iShootRaw.com or whatever it is, or store.frontnosephoto.com. We never promote it. I think if we actually promoted it a lot, we might get a nice uptick in sales and
no, they
be more
sell.
like... But I'm sure they don't sell as much as they would sell if we promoted them nonstop. Like back in the day when you first started, that was all you were promoting.
That was all I promoted. But when you have presets to promote...
Oh, I get it. It
makes it... See, you want to know numbers? $90 for presets. It's basically all profit except for when you get into the whatever the credit card fees are, which did go up a little bit.
I mean, it's nice passive income for sure, yeah.
It's a lot easier than dealing with a t-shirt that's going to make like $6 or $7.
And I'm such a big fan of that, again, the stealth version of the shirt, because I think people want to rep the whole I shoot raw look, and they want to say, hey, I do shoot raw. They're loud and proud, but at the same time, they don't want people to, they don't really want to show it and have people, guess what that means or think it's more of a sexual term or whatever it may be. When it's written giant letters across your shirt. Yeah, well, you are the I Shoot Raw guy, though. That's different.
I'm wearing a freshie, Steven.
It's your brand, yeah.
I'm wearing a freshie right now. This is a fresh, new one. Worked out today. Not in this shirt because it was leg day, Steven. It's Wednesday. It's leg day. So today I sweated through the green one.
You definitely can't wear a Thompson tee under that one, I'll tell you that.
No. This is
way too tight. Way too tight.
This is skin tight, but it feels nice. It's like a constant hug. Speaking of constant hugs, I went and got... ordered 2 new pairs of jeans.
The
Levi's, my ass was not looking good in these Levi's. People were telling me, Jared, your ass does not look the same. What happened? Where did it go? And I'm like, what do you mean, where did it go? I like my ass. So I went back and I'm getting 2 pairs of the Sebastian McCalls. He thinks the reason that they go so quick is
because you wear them every day.
But he said at least rotate them. Rotate them.
Oh, you mean what I've been saying for years?
But why would you
buy
rotate
a couple
them,
and rotate them?
Why?
What's
the reasoning behind it?
Because your phone is going in the same spot every single time. Because
that's not where it breaks. It's in my
it's in your crotch,
my
right?
inner thigh, my left thigh.
I mean, I think
my thigh.
They're going to go just. They're just going to last a little longer because you're rotating.
He said,
that's all.
Sweating. No, if I rotate it, it's basically going to be the exact same thing. They're going to last the same amount of time.
They're going to last the same amount of time, but longer because you're rotating them and taking a day off every other day.
Yeah, but I had 3 pairs the last time that I bought under 2 years ago, and they started to. Like I would wear 1 pair, then it goes. Then I wear another pair, and then it would go. I don't think that's going to extend the life, but he says that it might extend the life to rotate because they get sweat and they have no time to dry. So then it gets dry rot, whatever, and it just wears it out quicker.
So
we'll see.
My pair of pants would last like a week, is what you're saying.
Basically, it would be like swimming in an ocean. So they, what I realized though is their pockets are not deep at all. Even the regular size iPhone sticks out the top of these goddamn pockets.
Yeah,
which is frustrating. But the way that my ass looks and the way that these feel, so much nicer.
Man,
so much nicer.
First world problems. Whew.
Yeah.
Glad you got through that. Glad
I
you did it.
It was very difficult. So anyway, I did the interview with Eugene. I drove the Tesla down. Oh, that's going on right now. 4:00 on. We're recording on Wednesday. The Tesla, they're going to probably announce that they have new Model Ys, and I'm going to be fucking pissed off that they're like, oh, we've got a front camera now, probably.
Yeah, but I'm sure you're going to be paying for that if you bought the new version versus the version you bought. No, that's
like they're putting the sensors back in the car that they took out in my version. I wanted to wait. I didn't wait. I got screwed on the discount, as you know, even though I got $7,500 off. Then they dropped it $13,000. So yeah, it was a little bit of a disappointment there, and it would be a disappointment when they're going to add new cameras. Basically, they're going to add a whole new camera suite, and it's only been since December that I got the damn car. So,
dude, it reminds me of the time I bought the Canon 70-200 EF version 1 2.8 back in the day in like 2009 or whatever, and literally 2 months later the version 2 came out for the same exact price and the version 1 dropped, and I'm like, really? Too late to return it at that point. It just sucks. It sucks because you wait and wait and wait for the latest and greatest, and then you eventually pull the trigger because it took forever, and then right after Murphy's Law, something new comes out and you're like, damn it, I should have waited.
There's other things, like my car was probably worth the most that it was going to be worth at the time to trade it in. So anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
I drove down. I had to stop and pee, and I stopped at Chesapeake House, one of those rest stops. And when I was there, I saw that they had a charger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had like 12 Tesla chargers there, charging station. I didn't need to go to the supercharger yet, but I got to his place after the interview. I drove back, and I knew I was going to need to stop, because it said I wouldn't have enough juice. I was at 50. I used 50% on the way down. And so it's like, you just need a little bit of juice. I stopped at the Chesapeake place. Within 6 minutes of charging, I had 100 miles back in the car because it was at 600 plus miles an hour of charging. And
I just wonder how often or how long does it take to degrade that battery over time? Like, is it going to be the next year you're going to get just as much mileage out of it for that distance?
No, you lose a little bit. They have the numbers. It's one of the better ones for losing. It's maybe like 3%.
If you need like a whole new battery, is it like the cost of a new engine for a regular gas car?
I don't think you really ever run into that too much.
We're still pretty new in the battery age, you know?
Yeah, but these have been out for 10 years. Teslas have been around for 10 years.
Oh, I'm saying, like, for example, like an engine. Like, you wouldn't really need a new engine for like 20 years.
Right.
Unless you really beat it up.
The batteries are rated for like 3 million miles or something. Okay. I don't know, something along those lines.
Interesting.
But anyway, I was able to charge. Like people always ask, like, "Whoa, are you worried about charging?" Now, there's a thing you need to do called preconditioning your battery. That's when you're on your way to the charger. It heats it up to warm it up to allow it to accept charging quicker, to do the quick charging. Mine wasn't fully conditioned, but I still got 600 miles to the in an hour. Of charging, and I didn't charge for an hour. I charged for 12 minutes, and I went from saying that I would have 4% battery by the time I got home to 33% battery in 12 minutes by the time I would get home. So it was really easy. And if you're driving up and down I-95, you're gonna have no problem charging your Tesla up. Or now Tesla's opening up their superchargers to other people's cars, and that's a new thing that's happening, which is going to be frustrating when you try to go park to charge, and there's some stupid-ass electric car that's from Loserville.
I like that we talked about the actual podcast you were on for about 30 seconds and the Tesla for the next 15 minutes.
Okay, the podcast
How did it go? Yeah.
The podcast is called Smoking Heroes.
Okay.
Because it has a lot to do with weed. Because he's a weed investor.
So clever.
He's a weed investor. He's got growing facilities.
That's
and
cool.
They're licensed to sell and buy. And he attributes smoking weed to helping heal his brain and all of that stuff. We didn't talk about weed. I don't smoke. I will tell you, though, that I might have been a little impaired when I walked out that door.
You smoked that day.
I didn't smoke. I didn't choose to smoke. It must have been in the air.
Nice secondhand smoke.
But I definitely was high when I left. A little bit. I was a little bit high when I left.
So how was their whole setup? Was it a long interview? Was it 30 minutes, 90 minutes?
Oh, it was a good interview. It was probably, I don't even know how long it was.
Because you'll talk forever, yeah.
Well, what they did is they started rolling. They didn't even do an intro, and I knew they started the roll based on how he was going and the questions that were being asked. I'm like, we're going, right? And yeah, so we were going. But he had a bunch of Sony cameras that he bought all because of our videos. So
cool.
They had a whole Sony setup. They had the Rode board. They had all the Shure microphones. They had the chairs. They had everything was set. So
nice.
They have a pretty good
setup. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, getting there. And it was the first time they were doing it, so they definitely were getting there. But no, it was awesome to be on it, and it was awesome. The other guy that was on the show, this cohort, was in jail for 21 years.
Wow.
And he found our videos when he came out and used those videos to help get jobs and work, because he's like, coming out of jail, no one wants to hire you. I picked up your camera. He's like, I read 1,500 books while in jail. He read 1,500 books.
I mean, you got all the time in the world, literally.
Everything that he could read, he read. He was reading Photography for Dummies. So he was learning, and probably, Stephen, literally taking pictures in his mind while he was in jail. This
is a dumb question, but in today's age, 2023, they don't have like Wi-Fi in jail, right? Like, or TV. It's
they have
strictly
TV.
Just a jail cell still?
They do. Yeah, they have TV, but they don't have internet, Steven.
Or is there like library hours where you can, use the internet for 30 minutes? I would think they would restrict it because, let's find out how to make a shank in jail. You know what I mean? Using a toothbrush.
You can't use the internet like that, but it would be great to have more education. Obviously, we don't want to go down this path, but our penal system is pretty bad. It's not meant to rehabilitate, even though that's what it's supposed to be. It's really just locks you up, throw the key away, don't help you get better, whatever. We're not going there.
And I'm curious, can they listen to podcasts? I was listening to Smart List, for example, the other day. This podcast with Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and the one guy from Will and Grace, Sean something, I forget his name. But they brought up the whole question of, do they have Wi-Fi in jails? And I'm like, really interesting. I wonder if there are people in jail that can listen. And I think
it would be good.
Depending on the level of your lockup.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to get cameras into inmates, but I'm not sure you can do that. Like, I'm not sure that someone would be like, they could turn this into a weapon, right?
Sure.
And whatever. But maybe there was some way that they could check out a camera and learn just something to better themselves. I got to talk to Jason Flom about that.
Because a podcast could almost be like an audiobook, you know? And they're reading books anyway. So I don't know. I'm just fascinated on that whole system and how it works in today's age of 2023.
So here's an idea, Steven. Why don't you go down to the 7-Eleven, try to rob them, go into jail,
all right,
and then tell us. Report back.
I'll call you
with
later.
With your V-neck.
You'll be my first call from jail.
Yeah, 1-900 call Frono's Photo.
My first
collect
and
a
only
lot.
call.
Yeah, he's going to call 313-710-9729 and be like, what? I got a text? I can't text you?
Can you actually call that number?
You can call the number. There's a voicemail from me.
Does anyone actually leave a voicemail?
They can't leave a voicemail. It tells them to text.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Anyway, it was awesome to be interviewed by Eugene. Awesome guy. I was really happy to do that and be there. And when it comes out, maybe we'll put it up as a special edition episode or something.
Sure.
So moving on. Over the weekend, I shot the R8. It came Thursday or Friday, and I had shoots lined up. I had women's lacrosse at Temple University against Princeton University on Saturday. It was cold, so it was about 28, 29 degrees out there, and it did end up snowing a little bit, which was awesome because it wasn't a wet snow. It was like a dry, nice, beautiful snowflakes that were just falling and
really?
didn't
It was
even...
right on the edge, too, temperature-wise. Surprised it wasn't wet.
No, they were great. Yeah, it wasn't wet. It was perfect. They were like flakes. They didn't even get wet on my hair because it was kind of like icy a little bit, but it was perfect for being in the background of images. I used the R8, started with the 400 2.8, switched over to the 600 f4 real fast, and used the 600 f4. I will be putting out a video probably with clips of the EVF recordings, but I do want to make something clear that I'm not looking through the actual viewfinder, which still makes it less stable, which sucks. No, I'm saying it. See, I know you're smiling because I always say it.
You explain it every time, and it's a given that you're not going to be able to hold it that great when you have a EVF recorder.
But it's so much easier to use the camera when I look through the damn viewfinder because that's what I did. I don't think
people are going to judge you and be like, you got a shitty photo because you use this EVF recorder.
I don't want them to judge the camera and be like, oh, it's not stable. It's so not stable because it doesn't have IBIS.
Nikon, Sony, fanboy.
Yeah, Jimmy.
New South Park tonight, by the way.
Oh, I haven't watched South Park.
They're going to talk about Japanese toilets, whatever that means.
Oh, I got one.
Do you? Is that like a new thing?
I've had a Japanese toilet since I moved in. It was the first thing I put into my house.
That's the one with the...
it's a Toto.
The squirty squirt?
A bidet?
Bidet, that's it, a bidet.
Yeah, it squirts water in your butt. You don't even need to use toilet paper, Steven.
I think you told me to try it out. I think when you first moved in, you're like, try it out. I'm like, I'm good.
No, you shouldn't be. Once you try it, you never want to go back to the other one.
Exactly. And I got to go back to my freaking peasant house with a shitty toilet that doesn't wipe for me.
With a shitty
spray my butthole.
Yeah, so it even has the water oscillates.
A shitty
and you
toilet.
can heat it. Yeah, it even oscillates. So it's like...
Wait,
ooh.
You can do warm water too?
Of course you can. I can set the temperature of the water. I can set the temperature of the seat.
That sounds nice.
This fix is brought to you by Toto Toilets, which can be upwards of $11,000.
Oh my! What did you pay?
$2,000.
Oh my god!
But
I'll
it was
stick with my
$2,000.
shitty $200 toilet or whatever they normally cost.
It was $2,000 because it's $1,000 for the porcelain part of it, or you can do the add-on, which is the bidet part, for $1,000. Well worth it for the washlet, dude. I highly recommend it. It's healthier for your body to do that.
You make it seem like it's easy to just be like, oh, just pay $2,000 for a toilet. So
you
easy.
could get the $1,000 add-on.
It's still expensive.
Steven, is your ass worth it or not?
I mean, it is, but I'm not paying $1,000 for that.
How much do you spend on Preparation H a month? This cuts down on all your Preparation H because it shoots water right where it needs to be, and the women like it because it can shoot the front and the back.
Ooh.
Yeah, I've never tried the front part because I'm not a woman. But Caitlyn Jenner, on the other hand, when she came over, she could try the front and the back.
All right.
All right, moving on from that back to the R8. So yeah, what I will say is that women's lacrosse is fucking awesome. These girls were fantastic out there. They were so much better than the men's lacrosse that I photographed because the men's, they don't shut up. They just
talked
constantly
about this last week. Move
ripping
on.
up. Anyway, the women would get like rolled over. They get like knocked over by another girl. They'd pick themselves back up and get right back into the game. They didn't complain. They didn't cry. They just got up and played.
By the way, I took a look at the photos when you sent them over, and I will say it is so unflattering for that person photographing them playing lacrosse because they have the mouthpiece in and everything, and they're making these weird faces, and it's so tough to get a decent looking image from someone playing lacrosse without them looking ridiculous. I think you had one photo where the person actually looked kind of normal because they were just standing still, like waiting for the ball or whatever.
Did you print it out, Steven? Did you print it out?
No.
No, you didn't print it out.
But it's a shame that mouthpiece really does ruin like the photo.
Well, you're just looking at it from a sexist
from like
standpoint.
An aesthetic. No, you're making a weird face, whether it's a woman or a man. Like you're just like.
It's like they have something in their mouth because they do a mouthpiece.
Exactly.
Photos are great. The autofocus was fan-freaking-tastic.
So did it just feel like an R6 Mark II minus, the joystick and a couple of the bells and whistles?
Well, yes. No, it felt like an R3.
Jesus,
that's
man,
the thing.
For $1,500.
Well, the difference is when I used the R10 and the R7, remember I was like, these kind of feel like an R3, but the R10 lagged slightly, but was still better than a Nikon. But then would kind of be a little awkward shooting soccer. Because the R6 Mark II is fantastic. We know that autofocus is great. I felt when we shot the R6 Mark II that was verging on even or better or around an R3. It's very hard to compare the two when you're not using them side by side, but just the fact that it worked, and then I look at the pictures and I don't miss, the fact that I don't miss is the other thing that's fantastic.
What I really like about the R8 is, again, like it's basically the R6 Mark II guts, but what someone like Sony does, with their lower end full frame models like the A7C, it's like more of like a Frankenstein camera where it's an older processor with maybe a newer focusing system or an older, I forget what that camera has, but it just feels like it's a Frankenstein camera. Like it feels like that focus system was not meant for that camera and that it lags. At least that's how I always felt. It doesn't feel quick, edgy, you know what I mean? Like right away
the
focusing.
A7 IV.
Now the A7 IV is a different story.
Feels laggy.
I mean, a little bit, but I'm talking like the A7C where it's the A7 III focusing system and all. It's the A7 III guts. Where again, you have something like the R6 Mark II going into an R8 body. It just blows my mind for $1,500. But who knows what Sony has cooking up right now that's going to replace the A7C, and maybe that'll be an A7 IV in a small body.
I don't know, man. All they have is like
and
the
Nikon.
A1.
They can have a Z9 in a small body. Who knows?
Well, what I could tell you from using the R8 for shooting that with the 600 f4, we're talking about adapted 11-year-old lens version 2, and I don't notice any issues with autofocus whatsoever when using that.
I can tell that glass was definitely not as sharp as today's lenses.
I couldn't tell. I mean, I didn't see issues with the images personally. I printed them out and they look great.
Yeah, I don't know. I could just tell like with today's glass versus like RF glass, for example, versus some of the old EF glass. There's always
maybe
like
there's
a little
better contrast.
That's like the micro contrast and everything. The detail's not as tight. I can tell that with the 600 f4, but like you said, it's an adapted 11-year-old lens. So what do you expect?
And I mean, I was extremely happy with the results that I was getting.
You think you can ever get a 600 or 400 RF loaner, like long term, from Canon?
No, I don't think I can get a long term. But I will tell you, the kid that I stayed with in Orlando, the one who was shooting the rockets, Trevor.
Yeah,
I connected him with Canon because he owns like 15 bodies, R bodies, and I'm like, I'm going to connect you with them. They hooked him up with a 1200 to borrow.
Wow.
To shoot some launches. He's like,
what's
dude, I don't know if I want to give
5.6?
this back.
Jeez.
Is it a 5.6?
I would think, right? 1200, or no? Is it like an F8 or something?
I think it's higher than that.
Because I guess a 5.6 is their 800.
And then you stack another thing on it, and you're looking at like.
I remember
F8.
someone we used to photograph with. I forget. He'd be at like the Firefly Fest, all the festivals he would be at, and he would bring an 800 5.6. He would just walk around. I'm like, what are you, dude? What are you shooting from like a mile away?
Was that Edgar?
No, this is a guy that. He was like a hippie kind of guy. Cool guy, but yeah, he would lug around this 800, and I'm like, why, dude? You're shooting from like
just to shoot tight
half
pictures.
a mile away. Like, I don't get it. And we were always in the pit is my thing. That's what I'm saying.
So then the second day that I shot, so I was really happy with the lacrosse shots. Oh, and I shot 40 frames a second silent shutter, which is 10 frames more a second than I get on my freaking stack sensor of the R3.
Wow.
So getting 40 frames, I wanted to shoot sports that way. I saw no issues with rolling shutter. Girls running down the field at full tilt, the ball, didn't really see much in the way of issues there. That was fine. The next day, I go and photograph the Harlem Globetrotters. Now I'm breaking out all the RF glass. Really good. There was one picture that I put up on Instagram where it looks like the ball in a vertical is smushed a little bit. Other than that, no issues at 40 frames per second.
I mean, we've seen with the R6 Mark II when we did that initial trip with them and we put it up against the R3, almost the same shot, stacked sensor versus non-stacked. We saw that there is still going to be some weird bowing and stuff like that, but you're talking super fast serves from like a tennis player, maybe a super fast golf swing, like crazy fast action. But I think something like a lacrosse, hey, that's still pretty fast action.
They're throwing that at 90 miles an hour sometimes.
Straight sticks. So for it to not really bend is pretty remarkable for what you're paying for.
I just love the fact that I could go into 40 frames a second and do it. What I will say, some feedback, because people want to know buffer. They want to know, is the SD card a problem? IBIS a problem? Battery life.
That's battery
what I want to
know,
life.
yeah.
I went through one battery outdoors because it was 29 degrees. That's also after I set the camera up here, spent some time without it fully charged. So yes, I went through one full battery and then put another one in. Didn't have a problem for the rest of the game. So that's a couple hours outside, 2.5-ish, 3 hours outside. Yes, I went through a battery, but that was over 1,000 pictures. That was like 1,900 pictures, all silent, all using, that's powering the lens too, right?
Sure,
that's powering
everything.
a 600 f4. That's shooting 40 frames a second.
It's powering
so
the non-existent IBIS.
Right. So I had some questions come in, and I'm going to make a video about this. Guys like, well, did you notice any issues with not having IBIS? I'm like, I'm shooting at 1/3200th of a second. Of course there's not going to be no issues. Even with IBIS, 1/3200th of a second, I don't need IBIS at 1/3200th of a second. I leave it on in the body. The lens has it, right? The lens has stabilization.
I always thought it was meant more for like slow shutter speeds, the opposite.
Yes, it's meant for slow, but a lot of people have this idea, and I've said it in videos in the past, that IBIS doesn't freeze the subject. IBIS counterbalances your movement. It counteracts your movements. It's not going to help at a 15th of a second. It's not going to freeze the action. It's just going to keep it stable.
I just saw somebody post, I'm part of the R5 Facebook group. It's like R5 users or something it's called. And someone posted they had IBIS on by accident when they did a panning shot, and the IBIS actually corrected their panning movement. They must have been, obviously it's a slower pan that they did, but the subject is blurry, but the actual background is static and sharp. And a lot of people were like, well, clearly you didn't pan hard enough. And he's like, no. And he actually did another test with IBIS on and off. And you can see he is panning. It's just the IBIS is that good. It was actually correcting for his movement when he panned.
I don't know about that. I know that there is. Well, I know you go into one of the modes that
when
allows
I'm panning,
you to
I'm
get
actually
better
panning
lines.
pretty fast, though. I think panning is
At
meant
like
for
a tenth of a second.
Yeah, but I'm saying like I've panned. I've photographed like airplanes landing and panned with them, like a pretty fast pan, or cars drifting, stuff like that. It's fast.
Well, battery was fine. Obviously, we know what the battery life's going to be. Memory card, I had to make sure that I had a V90 card in there because I put a V60 in first, and I was locking it up when I would go through the buffer. You would get anywhere from, depending on your ISO, the higher the ISO, the more data, so you get less frames per second. Or sorry, not less frames per second, but less frames in the buffer. I saw it go from 38 to as high as, say, 41 or 42, or actually it was 43 shots in a buffer. Now, 40 frames a second with 40 in a buffer means you get 1 second of shooting.
Burst, yeah.
If you outrun the camera and you use that whole thing, it kind of doesn't let you shoot again for about 5 seconds. Now, if you do a burst here, for a half a second, take your finger off, it starts writing shit back. If you do a burst again, as long as you keep some buffer there, you're fine. Now, if you run through that entire buffer, I counted between 4 to 6 seconds until the buffer, 6 seconds was when it was fully ready to go at 43 again.
You can actually see in our preview video when we were in, where was that? Florida?
Charleston.
When we were in Charleston, I actually showed you talk about like the buffer and saying, all you have to do is lift your finger up and the buffer clears. I actually did do a real-time buffer test, and it is about, like you said, 5, maybe 6 seconds at most for it to really fully clear if you're running it all the way down.
It's just
so you can see it there if you guys want to see what he's talking about.
And it's important that you use the V90 card, not the V60.
Fastest SD card possible, yeah.
Yep. And that worked, and that was fine. And that answers basically the questions.
I thought they said 80 total RAW files, which is essentially 2 seconds, 2 full seconds.
maybe
when
if you're at
shooting
100
electronic. ISO. Oh, true. High ISO
Right?
will definitely. Yeah, it's more data and more information with high
Right.
ISO, so it takes up. It's a bigger file.
So I was seeing 40 frames and up to 43 at the most, and the lowest was 38.
Makes sense.
But no problems. Harlem Globetrotters, fantastic shooting that. That was awesome with cheese. A guy I met at NASA, he was there for this social event as well from Harlem Globetrotters. They were doing something for TV, and he was like, hey, we'll be in Philly. You want to come to the game? And I'm like, I'd like to shoot. And he's like, I don't know about that. And I went and contacted Harlem Globetrotters myself to set it up. And it was great because there was this other guy named Tommy Powers.
Kenny Powers?
No, not Jimmy Powers. Tommy Powers. He turns out is a big fan, and someone on Instagram was like, oh, if you see this guy, say hi. He's a big fan. So he gave me his number. I texted him. I saw him. He's like, oh, I'm fangirl, and this is awesome. He's like, yeah, you could shoot everything, shoot the whole game. This is going to be great. And I got awesome stuff. I edited them and sent them over, said give them to everybody on the teams. They can do whatever they want with them. And then he was like, these are fantastic. The fact that I did this all with an R8,
Mind blowing.
the first time I used it, man,
expensive glass, but still.
of course, but we get into arguments, you and I, about this all the time. Like I said, I rather have an R8 with the best glass in the world than an R3 with a shitty kit lens.
No, and I'm not saying no to that. Like, I totally agree on that. I always just say when you're buying an R8, someone might not have the amount of money to buy a 28 to 70 f2. That's $3,000. That's all I'm saying.
I just try to push people to understand that it's glass. Just like why you shoot RAW and not JPEG, which we'll get to in another minute.
And I think that's why it's great that we really showcased using some of the more affordable, like 51.8 prime, the 85 f2, the more quote unquote shittier glass during the Charleston trip, where now you can go to town and do the glass.
It's still good glass.
That's what I'm saying. It's still pretty decent glass, and the pictures show that we got some great results even from the lower end $400 or $500 lenses.
I don't know. That 85 f2 is awesome. The 51.8's a piece of shit. The $179
What do you expect?
Nifty 50 RF is so bad it's not even funny.
And back in the day, Canon used to have.
Did you hear that?
What?
That's the money truck backing away because I just said that $179 is a piece of shit.
But back in the day, they used to have.
I eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast.
You eat pieces of shit for breakfast? They used to have the 51.8, the Nifty 50 for like $100 in the EF version, and then they had the $350 1.4 version, which I had, which was super slow focusing, but it was a 1.4 versus 1.8. And then you had the ultimate, 51.2, but they had those three ranges of 50 millimeter lenses. Now you just have the real shitty 50 Nifty 50, or you have the 1.2. There's nothing in between.
Nothing in between.
Where Sony now has that in betweener of the 1.4 that's $1,000, nearly less than their 1.2. So
yeah. So the my quick take on using the R8 for the first time in the real world, not at a press event. I shot it as I would shoot an R3. The autofocus just worked. I did not feel like I was fighting it. And that's the thing that people continually tell me about the Z9 or Nikons, that, Jared, you just don't know how to set it up. I've had it for a year and you don't know how to set it up. I'm like, the fact that I'm still fighting it and friends of mine are still not sure what modes to be in, not to harp on it every single time, but picked up the R8.
To harp on it.
But to harp on it, to pick up the R8, the $1,500 full frame camera, and to have it feel like an R3 in terms of focusing speed and shoot at 40 frames a second. I mean, dude, my images are good. I'm telling you, they're great.
Best
they're
of the
grand.
best,
They're
man.
the best ever. They're really
Do you know who
good.
shot these?
And then I edited them, and they looked fantastic. I will be putting that out.
It is great that you got to actually test out some high-speed action, because we really had no action on that trip. It was more like, here's some models that are not moving at all and static. Have fun. It's like not really a big test for the camera,
5,000 ISO I shot with the indoors for the basketball.
Same sensor as the R6 Mark II, so shouldn't be any surprise that it's going to be great.
Nope, printed out on the Pro 1000, looks amazing.
I still wouldn't push cameras
ISO.
though, like past 6400, 12,800, unless I really needed to these days. I feel like they really haven't gotten that much better in the real high ISO.
Yeah, but if the exposure, if you have enough light, it doesn't matter.
Well,
it's always down to light,
of course.
Like that Modest Yahoo shot was 8,000 ISO
I'm talking
from the
more
D3S.
like low light concerts, stuff like that, where it's just a dimly lit concert hall.
The Modest Yahoo shot.
Yeah. But nowadays, I want to know, like, has it gotten much better with 12,800 or 25,600?
I remember shooting the Z6 the first time I got it at like 10,000 ISO and being like, damn, that's really good.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Anyway, love shooting the R8. May go shoot at Longwood Gardens maybe tomorrow. We'll see, just to get more stuff. I could take out the Nikon as well because I've got that 24-200, which I don't think anybody cares about us reviewing, but whatever. Speaking of Nikon, rumors of a Z8 coming possibly soon in end of March is what they said, which I hope doesn't happen because I'm heading off to Paris on March 28th, so we'll have to see what happens.
I hope it doesn't happen either because, like you said, you're going to be away, and I don't know what I would do if that was the case.
People are sitting at home going, you already have it, Jared. You already have it. And here it is. I don't have it. I don't actually. Oh, shit. My camera's moving.
I'll show you mine if you show me yours.
3, 2. Oh, that's an R.
I got one for video. You got one for photo, right?
That's an F3.
No, we do not have a Z8, everybody.
We don't have a Z8. We know nothing about the Z8 at this point. We're in the same boat as all of you. We don't know if that March 28th is real or not real, but
maybe it's I could see like a development announcement because that's what Nikon loves to do for all of their higher end, full frame cameras. So I could see that, but I would think a DA would already have happened by now because the Z8 has been such a long rumored camera.
Well, we'll see. Let's move on to the big story, Stephen. The big story that's probably in the title that we'll be making after the fact. F-Stoppers put up an article by Reza Malaliri. Should you shoot JPEG as a professional photographer was the title. So a RAWtalk listener texted this into me. Yeah, so if you want to text articles that you want to hear me yell about, text them to 313-710-9729. Make sure that you put the link in there properly and you explain what it is because I'm not a fan of clicking links if I don't know who or what they are. I can't find the guy who sent it to me, but thank you for sending this because this is right up my alley. What we're going to do here is we're going to read this article to you like I did back in the day when Scotty didn't know during the Peloton thing, the Peloton debacle. That was a great one when I read it. So let's read this article. Can you shoot exclusively in JPEG as a professional photographer? ? Check out our interview with award-winning wedding and portrait photographer Scott Robert Lim as he explains why he's been shooting only JPEG for over 23 years. I've never I don't know this photographer, and that's not a down thing. How many Instagram followers do they have? Because that tells us everything. 74,000. They have 74,000.
A lot more than me.
He's a Sony artisan, a coach, and whatever. So I don't know him. Has he ever messaged me? Let's see. Because, I don't see messages from people who... nope, never sent me a message before. But anyway, let's read this. I recently had the opportunity to interview award-winning master photographer. See, I fucking hate when they say master photographer. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
Would you have a master's degree in photography? And even if you did, so what? That doesn't make you a good photographer. I'm not yelling at this guy. I'm yelling at the person who wrote it.
Do they give out masters in photography?
They don't give them. You have to pay for them.
Well,
you have to go to school.
You go through school, but I didn't realize that was... I think in my school it was like a minor. I didn't think you could major in it, and you definitely couldn't get a master's in it, but I didn't go to an art school.
You were with a minor?
No, I didn't have... Oh, you got me there.
It goes on to say that he's a Sony artisan of imagery, Scott Robert Lim. Scott has over 70 international awards to his name and is regarded as one of the world's finest wedding and portrait photographers. I love when people, like, I could call myself I'm one of the greatest photojournalists of my generation as voted by no one, right? You could just say whatever you want to say.
I always
don't care
question
about
that
70
stuff,
awards. 70 awards, like, it's so subjective. Award. Remember Sal Sincata? Remember when he won his own competition? Yeah. It's something like that. Now Vanessa Joy's going to be like, were you talking about Sal again? He thinks you're an asshole. Like, well, he did win his own competition. He goes on to say, a few years ago, I attended one of Scott's presentations and was blown away when he mentioned that he shoots exclusively in JPEG as a professional. Like many others, I've always associated being a pro with shooting in RAW. So when Scott mentioned that he's a pro JPEG shooter, I had to learn more. Take a look at the interview below. Actually, I should say read the interview below to learn more about Scott, better understand his approach and some of the reasons behind why he's chosen to shoot JPEG as a professional photographer for over 2 decades. The interview. Question. Tell us a bit about your background, your style of work, and how long you've been shooting in JPEG versus RAW. I'm reading you the whole article because there's things to go over, Stephen.
That's a long article.
His answer: speed. We're gonna go through and we're gonna give our opinion, aka debunk this bullshit like I used to do with Ken Rockwell, but speed. It's so much faster to work with JPEG versus RAW images on your computer. That's such bullshit. That's such hogwash at this point in 2023.
Well, unless you're dealing with uncompressed giant RAW files from the Sony A1, I could kind of see that, but I mean, yeah. I mean, if you're dealing with a newer computer, it's pretty damn fast, whether you're dealing with RAW or JPEG.
He goes on to say, if you want to double the speed of your computer, just shoot in JPEG. I don't think so. You'll get much faster with JPEG, more than double. That's just a dumb statement. Sometimes I'm scrolling through thousands of images in Lightroom and shaving seconds per image adds up to a lot of time saved. You know what is a lot of time saved? When you actually have a computer that works, that's fast, and you don't always need to upgrade to the latest Mac because you're dealing with photography, you're dealing with photos, you're not dealing with video. So you can punch through that shit for years. Shooting in JPEG also means that you don't have to use the latest and greatest computers to edit your images, saving you even more. You're a professional, dude. You make money. You have 70 awards to your name. You have fine leather-bound books and mahogany shelves. So you can afford it. Shooting in JPEG also means that you don't have to use the latest and greatest computers to edit your images, saving you even more time and money. I know that RAW has much more dynamic range and detail, but I've had my images published all around the world, and not once has anyone noticed that I shoot them in JPEG. Post-processing can also make up for image shortcomings. I have people wonder how I get my images so sharp. So he's gonna counter, like, he's gonna debunk himself throughout this article, because saying something like, I use post-processing, but I also get it right in the camera, dumb shit like that.
Sounds like an interview we heard a couple of years back from a Nikon shooter.
With who?
Moose Peterson.
Oh, Moose Peterson.
I don't need 11 frames per second. I just need one frame. But
yeah,
you
I shoot
just
RAW,
shot
but I don't
11
edit.
frames per second. What?
That's a great Northrop interview that you should just watch.
It's
Tony's
really
face.
Good. Tony's holding back so much in that interview. Yeah.
Tony and Chelsea's face in that video is amazing. Yeah. Okay, here's the question. What are some of the most important considerations that new photographers should keep in mind if they decide to shoot JPEG exclusively? Well, I'll just tell you right off the bat, new photographers shouldn't even, I always say that new photographers should probably just shoot JPEG and RAW and just put the RAW somewhere, but I don't give a shit what you shoot in early.
That's my thing. Just shoot RAW to one card, JPEG to the next. I mean, you have the best of both worlds. You can start with JPEG if you want, but at least you have the RAW to fall back on. If there is that one image that needs a little more tweaking than the JPEG allows for, why not just shoot both? That's what I don't understand.
His answer is, the better you are at lighting and getting a balanced exposure, the easier it is for you to shoot in JPEG.
Yeah, but
you don't want to
photojournalist or something.
Hey, Steven,
and you're on the fly, like you don't have time to be like, oh, hold on, let me put a strobe here and a speed light here. And
by the way, my R8 images were exposed basically spot on.
And typically you're like half a stop off, give or take.
It wasn't bad. Like, I was spot on, which is great.
Interesting.
You don't want to overexpose large areas of your frame with no detail on a regular basis. If you are a photographer that loves to use off-camera lighting or is very good at using natural light, the transition to JPEG should be relatively easy. Shooting in JPEG, you can get about 2 stops of compensation, whereas with RAW, you get about 4, as I'm told, as I don't really know because I don't shoot RAW. It's like shooting slide from back in the day, where the exposure needed to be right on. With modern mirrorless cameras, it's much easier to nail the right exposure or be within a couple of stops, because if you weren't, you'd never take the picture. You would instantly see that it is bad exposure. I love that he's using modern technology, but still using this old school dumbass JPEG solution.
Well, what about shooting HEIF, for example? Like, you get 10-bit 422 files. They're small like JPEGs. They're compressed. They're giving you a little more latitude. Why not shoot that? I mean, if you're a Canon shooter, or I think the other brands do it too now, right? HEIF?
Yeah, but also, Steven, I went further
ahead
ahead
to JPEG, I guess, obviously for publication, but yeah.
So I actually skipped ahead a bunch of questions. I need to go back to read the questions that were earlier to really define some shit. Somehow I scrolled too far, but it doesn't change anything. But I will say that when I shot the R8 and we couldn't open the RAW files, and I tried to bring back highlights on the JPEGs where I was exposed for buildings and then the sky was off, it looked shitty. Really fucking bad. Really bad.
You're dealing with 8-bit files. Once you clip the highlights, you're screwed. And then on top of that, shadow recovery is next to nothing when it comes to JPEG. So
it was horrible.
It's tough.
So it's not saying that JPEGs aren't great. JPEGs are fantastic.
I agree.
But they're not RAW files. Okay, back up to the top. What made you decide tried to switch your workflow from RAW to JPEG. And this is where you just want to punch yourself in the face. When you shoot in JPEG, it makes everything faster. Back in 2001, when I was shooting 4 megapixel files,
back in my day.
Shooting RAW meant having a buffer of maybe 3 images, and then you had to wait for it to copy to your card. On the other hand, if I shot JPEG, I could easily double that speed and usually never had to wait for my camera to buffer. I just couldn't afford to wait for my camera to write to my card, which made shooting in JPEG ideal. Right, 2001. So 2003, I get my D2H. My D2H, I shot in RAW plus JPEG fine when I started because I didn't know what I was doing, but I thought that RAW made sense, but I didn't know. And I shot both. That camera shot 8 frames a second or 9 frames a second. I never had to wait for that buffer. There were 4 megapixel images back then. This is just another stupid statement. In addition to buffering advantage, during the beginning of my career, I would incur many more image errors when shooting RAW. I can't comment on this because I never shot where I had an imaging error from RAW.
Yeah, but is he talking about like the almost like the spinning drive like CF cards from back in the day that had like literally a mini hard drive in there? Because he talks about
23 years ago.
He talks about like write issues and corrupt files, but today's day, knock on wood, you really never have any corrupt files or any issues writing to the card if you buy a great brand card.
So using that as a stupid, that's just still using the old school, like, oh, well, this was 23 years ago. I can't change, I can't evolve, but yet he's talking about bringing back highlights and shit. In addition to buffering advantage, during my career, errors when shooting RAW. I consulted a famous wedding photographer who shot hundreds of weddings a year and told me not to shoot in RAW. This was because his studio would incur many image errors due to shooting in RAW. It was hard for older camera technologies to write larger files. Yeah, 23 fucking years ago, dude.
Oh, look, this article's from 2001.
Another reason I started shooting in JPEG is cost savings. My general rule for data backup is 3-2-1. 3 copies, 2 locations, and 1 online storage location.
I get that, yeah.
Shooting in JPEGs with 24 megapixels is 24 to 60 megapixel files. I usually use 2 terabytes of storage per year. In order to be safe, by the way, I have right around 14 to 16 terabytes of RAW images in my history of shooting images.
I think
that's going back to 2003.
I think I've got about 8 terabytes also in my history of shooting images. Now, I don't do this as my full-time gig, so I get it. I'm sure you would have a lot more if you're shooting weddings nonstops or events, but this is back when I was still shooting the radio station, which was multiple events a week, and I was always shooting stupid meet and greets and stuff like that, which I would still shoot RAW. So I have a lot of those files, 10 years worth, and still to this day, I only have about 8 terabytes worth of data. So I don't know where he's getting these crazy high numbers from when he's shooting.
Especially with JPEGs.
JPEG, yeah. Unless he's shooting thousands and thousands a day.
Overshooting. But he's just talking about, I could put everything on one 14 terabyte hard drive and it's so much easier. Again, prices of hard drives have come down.
So real quick, I have B&H up right now, and for example, like a Western Digital 12 terabyte drive is $200. A 16 terabyte drive, $300.
Is that for the RAW drive itself, or
this is for an actual external desktop drive?
Enclosure.
Now, if you want just the RAW internal NAS drive, it's $280 for say a Seagate 16 terabyte Iron Wolf Pro, and that's a 7200 RPM drive.
Right, and I stopped using. Backblaze exists. We used to work with Backblaze. I hear they've changed a bit. Simple pricing.
And Dropbox.
Backblaze, unlimited data, yearly.
What's unlimited for Dropbox? A couple $100? Well, $250 per user, right?
I pay $720 a year for 3.
But that's because you have 3 users.
Yeah. So
I'm pretty sure it's $250 a person.
Backblaze, which is not sponsored by Backblaze, simple pricing, unlimited data, never lose a unlimited data, $7 monthly, $70 yearly, or $130 for every 2 years.
And when you want to talk about a lot of data, by the way, the amount of data we have on Dropbox is 250 terabytes of data?
It's almost 300 right now.
Almost 300 now because we're doing video. But, he's talking about 10, 14 terabytes. It's really? That's not a lot in this day and age. Try doing video.
So let's keep reading because I'll skip around here. Are there any examples of situations when you were shooting in JPEG and you wished you would have chosen to shoot in RAW? And his answer is, shooting in RAW would be nice in situations where I need to pull back the highlights in a bright sky, especially when my subject is backlit by the sun and I'm unable to light my subject with an off-camera light to balance the exposure.
Yep.
Lightroom and Photoshop make it easy to deal with this challenge now, so I can still change the exposure of my background or swap out a sky with literally one click. I don't find that I would ever shoot RAW for what I do, given that I can overcome these challenges through post-processing. What the fuck are you talking about? You talked about getting it right in the camera as much as possible. The JPEG doesn't allow you to do that when you're trying to balance the light and you don't have the strobe. But you have a RAW file, like I just said, with the R8, when I had the building lit one way with the daylight and the sky was overblown, and when I brought it back, it was artifact central.
Sure.
This is just stupid. He's willing to use modern technology today to use his JPEGs, but back in the day when technology wasn't good enough, he only shot JPEG even though RAW existed. He's just counterbalancing. He's just like nullifying everything that he says because, oh, I could just do it through post-processing. Well, if you're going to do post-processing, then just shoot fucking RAW.
Yep, I agree. I mean, the only time that I could see JPEG working in 2023 is if you absolutely need the speed when it comes to shooting fast and delivering fast right then and there, like a sports shooter or an event shooter. Like when I would work for the radio station again, we would do live concert photography, and I would literally bring them back, have a card runner, run my card to the back. They would dump the JPEGs, upload them immediately right away, like almost zero editing. Everything was done in camera. I get that. I do. But that's really the only time I ever see JPEG being absolutely needed.
And there's only 2 more questions and answers here. Are there any non-negotiable situations where RAW is absolutely necessary? Answer, yes. If my client demands the files in RAW, I usually explain to my client that I've shot in JPEG for my entire career, and 99% won't care how I shoot as long as I get the results that they're looking for. However, if they insist that I shoot in RAW, then I do. It just...
Who's ever wanted a deliverable as like a RAW? I've never seen people asking for the RAW files. Or at least most photographers wouldn't give them the RAW files, I guess. I got the RAW footage from my videographer, I'll tell you that.
That's because she knows what she's doing.
She gave me everything. She dumped everything on a drive for me. She's like, whatever you want, you paid for it anyway, why not? I'm like,
she gets
awesome.
it. That's how you do wedding photography.
She even gave me a ProRes 444 like export of my final 4K video. And she didn't know how to do it, but I'm like, oh, yeah. I sent her like a screenshot and for Final Cut, and she's like, all right, cool, I'll do whatever you want. I'm like, that's called business right there. Customer service, whatever you want to call it.
And the last question is, any general advice for creators who want to consider optimizing their workflow for JPEG? Answer, if you're unsure about switching to JPEG, keep in mind that most cameras have 2 card slots. Start shooting in both JPEG and RAW, so you can practice using the JPEG files to edit and still have the RAW files in case you need them. This is literally the opposite advice that I give. Once you start gaining confidence in shooting JPEG, you can stop saving the RAW files. Is this an April Fool's joke? What's today? This is not April. This is March 1st.
It really is the opposite advice that we give, yeah.
After doing this for 6 to 12 shoots, you'll learn if shooting JPEG works for you. Every photographer should have a decent backup workflow with their files. Remember, the simple data, blah, 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 3, 2, 1, 3 copies, 2 locations, you're an asshole. Do not shoot JPEG. Like, this is just so stupid. His reasoning is so bad. Like, to even go back and to still be like, well, back in the day, it was terrible to shoot. 23 years ago, I couldn't get that many files.
Well, I wish he would have gave both sides. Like back in the day, this is why I started shooting JPEG. But, today, this is why I still continue to shoot JPEG because of this reason. I wish he would have done that.
There is no he did that
but
with
there is really no reason
back then because it was slow.
Yeah.
But for to not shoot RAW, to again say that it's slower, Steven, the R8 the other day, I'm shooting 40 frames a second RAW.
It's insane.
40 frames a second RAW. And it wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
And I shoot sports that way. Other people are like, I don't shoot sports in RAW because it takes too much time to edit.
Well, again, you don't have a quick, fast, turnaround time like most other actual like sports photographers. You're kind of doing it on your own time. So I do get that. But his whole argument, I feel like, was the main reasons he listed were it's speed, storage, and the right issues as the main cause of shooting JPEG. Like that, they're the 3 main reasons he shoots JPEG, which to me, all of those issues have been resolved in this day and age in 2023, and you can easily shoot RAW with speed, storage, and not having write issues. So I don't get it.
And to sit there and continually say like, well, if there's an issue with the JPEG, I can just the technology of Photoshop has gotten so much better. So you're going to sit there and say that the post processing has gotten so much better in 23 years, but you're not going to acknowledge that all of these answers that exist today for speed and storage exist. Look, I don't care what anybody does. You can shoot whatever the fuck you want to shoot, but you do know that RAW is better. RAW just is a better file. That's not saying that JPEGs aren't good. That's not saying you shouldn't get it as close and as right as possible in the camera. It's just that every time we go on one of these events, R6 Mark II event, and all I could look at and edit were the JPEGs, and then I go in and I edit the JPEGs, and I'm like, these just look,
night and day.
When I edit them, they just don't look good. Then as soon as I can open the RAW files and I edit them, I'm like, oh, yes, this is what we're talking about. And there's a reason I shoot RAW for sports, Steven. Every time I show sports shooters my images after the fact, like from the Phillies, from the World Series and all this, they're all like, how do you get your colors so good?
Yeah, because I
actually take time to do it. I shoot RAW.
Skittles,
I wear
by
it
the
on
way,
my
if you
shirt,
want to buy RAWpack 1. Skittles.
Skittles, RAWpack 1. I don't want to do plugs. I really don't want to do plugs. I think plugs are. I think our organic plugs make sense. I'm just saying, but I don't like podcasts now with the interruption ads that aren't even them, or it's them just reading. Like,
I noticed Spotify now has like a feature where it automatically throws in an ad at like the beginning of certain podcasts or in the middle, and sometimes it'll cut them off right in the middle of them like speaking, and I'm like, whoa, what just happened?
I skip them.
Yeah,
I just skip them. So anyway, what do you guys think about JPEGs? I mean, like I said, I've obviously been the I shoot RAW guy, and I will continue to shoot RAW because to me, I want all the data. Like, why would he be okay with editing subpar files, but no one's ever said anything about my images? Yeah. Like, why do you think you get them so sharp? You're adding sharpening after the fact to a JPEG. Like, just imagine RAW files. And yes, we've printed JPEGs
so
large. You can't really tell the difference.
Yep.
Yeah, you can't really tell much of a difference, but I can tell a difference when I'm editing my files. Then I'm like, this is so much cleaner. This is so much nicer. Oh, I can pull back the highlights, and it's not about getting it right and getting it wrong. I'm not getting it wrong on purpose. Sometimes you're off by a little in photojournalism. You're off. But even if I'm not off, even if I just, the dynamic range is just so much further. You've got so many, you have a bright spot and you have a dark spot, and you want to find the happy medium. You have a better opportunity to do it with RAW. Because when we were putting our presets work on the JPEGs, they don't look as good as when you use them on the RAW file.
Extra crunchy, basically, yeah.
Exactly, like your T-shirts.
That's my towels.
Oh, okay, Steven. Speaking of pals, my cleaning lady was over. My cleaning people were over today.
Oh, yeah? They have a lot of crunchy towels to clean up?
No.
My favorite argument too is when people are like, well, you shoot RAW photos, why don't you shoot RAW video? It's like, do you understand that like a minute of RAW video is like a freaking terabyte? Like, it's still not even close to there where, you know, the JPEG versus RAW conversation has pretty much ended in 2023, where RAW versus compressed video is still a very big thing. Like, it's very hard to shoot RAW video,
especially when everything's being recompressed anyway.
And I'm talking legit RAW, not like log footage or something like that. Like legit RAW video. I think I shot one time on the R5 with the RAW codec, and I've never touched it again because it was and the Nikon Z9. I think I was messing around with that RAW, but you can only do DaVinci Resolve with that, so it's a pain in the ass.
Yep. All right, Steven, we're done. We're gonna end this show, bro.
That's wrap it up.
We're all the way through. You guys can text us at 313-710-9729. We appreciate you guys listening. You got anything to say, Steven? How are your armpits?
Nice and dry. Nice and dry.
How are your armpit pads?
Nice and wet.
How about me?
I don't know. I can't see.
I think I'm dry as a bone, Steven.
Yeah, you're pretty dry.
Look at that. Look at that. Oh, look at you. See these arms, bro?
Nice and small.
My ass is going to look so fresh in these new jeans when I get them back. They're going to be so good.
I can't wait. I can't wait till we talk about it for like 30 minutes on a podcast.
Yeah, I'm going to show you I'm going to post a video of my ace.
Yes.
All right. You got anything else you want to say before you go?
That is all. We'll see you guys next week.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for listening. This is RAWtalk episode number 40. Jared Polin from photo.com. See ya.
Peace.
Goodbye.